Hi and welcome to my video about the basics of cricket scoring. I've got the help of a real innings in this scorebook. It's from the Galloway innings against Langloan at Drumpellier in 2018, and it's got some good illustrations of what I'm going to say. Keeping the score as accurately as possible is very important and just as skillful as batting, bowling, fielding or umpiring, and it demands at least as much concentration. Now, in a really close game where you think your side has won, imagine the disappointment if you were told later on the result will change because of an error by the scorers being discovered. It would be a huge disappointment. Law 16.9 does allow for that to happen, including a resumption of play if necessary and possible. You'll probably recall the 2019 Ashes Test where Stokes and Leach added 76 for the last wicket and England thought they'd won. But imagine if the scorers had run out to the middle and said, "Oh, sorry, we miscalculated, chaps. You need to get back out there and score another couple of runs." If England had ended up losing, imagine the pandemonium at Headingley. So, if you carry on watching, hopefully you will not be a victim of Law 16.9. There is another law I should mention, which is 2.15, and this does help the scorers because it requires the umpires to check the accuracy of the score all the way through as part of their role. Not a lot of people know that. So I recommend that the scorer, or perhaps gets the help of the batting side, to ensure that the scoreboard is kept up to date at the end of each over. If you're umpiring and you think a discrepancy has occurred, then you should make a note of it and the over number so you can check with the scorers at the earliest opportunity. The term scoring goes back several centuries when the basic team total was the only thing that was really kept, and the tally was literally notched or scored on a piece of wood for each run. And although it's nice to have individual batting and bowling stats, still the team score is the most important number and is the one that the scorer should make sure is accurate at all times. And for this reason, I'd say that this blue area that I've marked, which is usually on the right hand side of a standard scorebook, is the second most important part of the scorebook. And I suggest the convention of a diagonal line across a number if a single is scored, and if more than one run is scored off a ball, then put a horizontal line through the relevant number of numbers there. You may be able to see that here a 6 was scored the only 6 of the innings. It went from 55 to 61, the team score, and because it continued on to the next line, I've put the line jutting out, and that indicates that it's a continuation onto the next row of numbers. Also in this section is this area which is to help you keep the team score at the end of each over along with the bowler number, and this quite often when you don't know the opposition very well, you could end up putting overs down to the wrong bowler, so by putting the bowler number it will help sort out any discrepancies afterwards. And in between those two comes the number of wickets. I recommend just filling that in when it changes and not every over, so at a glance you can see a reasonable start and then couple of wickets, a couple of partnerships here of about 10 overs each, and then a cluster of wickets at the end. The most important section of all is the bowler's record. If you completed this accurately, you pretty much could reconstruct the rest of the innings afterwards. You would need to make a note of anything unusual though, such as one short, or if the batsman had crossed when a catch was being taken. Otherwise that wouldn't be apparent just by looking at the bowler's record. Most scorebooks do have a notes section for that purpose. In here, if nothing happens off a ball, it's called a dot ball, and you just simply put a dot in the relevant part of the score book. If a number of runs are scored off the bat, then you put the relevant number in there. It's generally going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 or 6, but I have actually played in matches where 5, 7 or even 8 have been scored off one ball. And then the other thing that can happen is, of course, extras. Here I'm showing you what the symbols are for the extras, and this is another section where you fill in the number of them that have been scored. So for a bye, it's an upturned triangle, a leg bye triangle pointing downwards, for a wide it's a cross or a plus sign, and a circle for no ball. Some really neat scorers managed to find the space to put additional things around those extra symbols. For example, if 2 byes are scored, the upturned triangle, they put 2 dots inside it. If 3 leg byes are scored, they put 3 dots inside a triangle pointing downwards. You can do that, but I think the only one where it's really essential is for wides. If you can see bowler number 3's 8th over, there is a wide, and the batsman run one off that, so you put one dot in the top left hand corner of the cross. In the next over, actually the batsman ran two off that, so you put two dots in the top two corners of the cross, and then in the extra section over here that would have appeared as a 2 and then a 3 respectively. If the bowler succeeds in bowling 6-dot balls, or only byes and leg byes are scored off his over, that's known as a maiden, and it's conventional to join up the balls with a letter M, as in Allison's first over. And a bit further along he's bowled another maiden where he's taken a couple of wickets, but even if it's just one wicket, it's a wicket maiden. It's conventional to join up those balls with the letter W. For consistency and clarity, I recommend the following convention. Put the first 3 balls in a downward column in the left hand side of the box, and then the next 3 balls in a column downwards in the right hand side of the box. And if additional balls are required, as they often are when there's league cricket and lots of wides being bowled, then the additional balls go down the middle of the bowler's box. If you can see bowler number 2's first over here, it goes no ball 4 dot, then wide, 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 and then there's still 4 balls to go. Fortunately they all fit because they were all dot balls and they go in the middle of that box. I'm now pointing to bowler number 6's last over, and it's clear that I'm going to run out of space because after he's delivered 6 balls he's only had one legal one because of the 5 wides. So I've actually put 4 of the balls in the right hand column, and fortunately the last 4 balls were all legal and so they fitted down the middle. And finally on this point I'd like to point to bowler number 5's 7th over. You can see that somebody different was scoring here because I was out batting at this point, and they haven't used the convention because their middle column is dot dot wide, and that can't possibly be the last 3 balls of the over because, as everybody knows, you can't finish an over with a wide. So really the point is all the way through here, sticking to the conventions of scoring does avoid confusion. This is the batsman section, and it's just simply where you put down how many runs each batsman has scored as you go along and how they were out. You can add in other things after the end of the match or the innings, such as how many boundaries they scored and even how many balls they faced. It's perhaps ironical that batsmen really want to know how many runs they've scored as soon as they're out, and invariably this is the one part of the scorebook that might be wrong. Especially in a high scoring match or where there's lots of singles being scored, the scorer's under a lot of pressure, and of course if they stick to the convention, the best thing is to put the entry in the bowler's box for each ball, then cross off the tally, and then sometimes the third thing, which is to put the runs against the relevant batsman, it either gets forgotten or it goes against the wrong batsman, and that's how individual scores can end up being wrong. Just a little illustration of that. In a frenetic match at Fergusley in 2010, I happened to be playing and doing the scoring for Galloway, and I had the pleasure of seeing Fraser Conn's maiden century for them. But there was a very big partnership of over 200 between Fraser and Pat Druce, and the opposition scorer made it that Druce got a century and Fraser was out for 99. But in fact I knew it was the other way around. But it did take quite a bit of proving and time eating into the tea interval before I was able to audit correctly and prove that I was right. As I said before, it's really the team score that's most important, but it was on this occasion nice to know that a teenager had got their maiden century, and I'm sure Pat wasn't too upset about not getting centuries. Had plenty before and plenty since. The one thing that I do to help check as I go along, an extra way of auditing, is to record the individual batsman's score at the end of each over and how many balls they've faced. So I think you can see in this particular innings the Galloway openers were Williams and Lamb. Williams got 1 off the first over, Lamb had 0 off 5, and by the end of the 4th over the team score was 24 for no wicket, and the 2 batsmen had scored 7 and 6 respectively. There were 11 extras, and we can see that they'd faced 27 balls between them, and that is correct because there were 3 no balls in that time. Obviously a batsman can score for no ball, but by definition you don't count wide as a ball faced because they cannot reach it. There's a couple of teaching points here from this innings. As I say, I was out batting towards the end of there, and it's quite neat apart from bowler number 4. And what happened was, in his 7th over, there was a leg by and a single. And whoever's scoring made 0 for 15 into 0 for 17 at the end of that over. But they should have only added 1 run on because the leg by doesn't count against the bowler. And that meant his final bowling analysis was changed from 4 for 20 to 4 for 19. It then meant that the bowling figures added up to 133 runs conceded by the bowlers, or 3 leg bys, to make the score 136, which exactly matched the Galloway score, and it's also the sum of the individual batting scores and extras, which is how it should be. Now, the other teaching point concerns bowler number 2's 2nd over, where there was a no ball that went to the boundary. Since this match in 2018, there's been a law change about this. At the time, this was regarded as 5 no balls. The team score would be 5, and all 5 runs would be allocated against the bowler, and you would put the circle for the no ball and 4 dots inside to indicate there weren't runs off the bat. But as a result of the law change, this would now be recorded differently. You would still do the no ball, and the bowler would still concede 1, but if it was bys or leg bys, then, in fact, if the ball went to the boundary, the umpire would have to signal 3 things. Firstly, the no ball with one arm outstretched. The scorer would then have to signal an acknowledgement to that. Then the umpire should make their second signal, which would be to say it was bys, or it could be leg bys. And when the scorer had acknowledged that, he would then do the third signal, which would be to wave one arm from side to side to indicate that it's a boundary. And then hopefully the scorer would acknowledge that as well. So if a bowler fires the ball very wide down the leg side and goes to the boundary, well, that counts as 5 wides, and the wicketkeeper can't really be implicated if it's well out of his reach. But if it's a no ball that goes to the boundary, then this will now be recorded as 1 no ball and 4 bys. So just beware if you're a wicketkeeper. And to summarise, dot balls are the scorer's friend. They take pressure off you, and they give you extra time, especially in maiden over, to make sure everything you're doing is adding up. They only have to be recorded in 1 place. Runs off the bat or extras have to be recorded in 3 places, and I recommend that you put it in the bowler's box first, then do the tally for the team score, and then finally the relevant row of the batting area or the extras area. For wides and no balls, you can actually do a 4th entry, which is to put it in a box alongside the bowler, which is in most scorebooks, and that shows at a glance how many wides or no balls each bowler has conceded. Collapses are the scorer's enemy because they require extra entries to be made when a wicket falls, and if you're strolling out to bat, please spare a thought for the scorer and try and last at least a couple of overs to give them time to complete everything about the previous wicket. And that's all there is to the basics of scoring. Thank you for watching.